Hello and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be doing a 7th grade math video where we're going to be reviewing operations with decimals. That'll include adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Now you may be wondering, why are we reviewing operations with decimals? I already know how to do this. And while that might be true, it is good to review because in 7th grade math, what you're going to start doing is performing operations with what we call rational numbers. The rational numbers are positive and negative decimals and fractions. So it's a good time to start reviewing how we do operations with decimals, since we'll need that knowledge to complete operations with rational numbers. Okay, so our first one is going to be a multiplication one. It's where we're doing 4.4 times 4.8. So what I like to do when I'm multiplying decimals is completely ignore the decimals, pretend they're not there. So what I'm going to do is set up 48 times 44. So I'm going to multiply without the decimals. 8 times 4 is 32, so I'll put a 2 here and regroup the 3 here. Then 4 times 4 is 16, plus 3 is 19. So I'm going to put the 9 here and the 1 right here. Now I'm going to move on to my second row, which means I'm done multiplying by this 4. I don't need this 3 anymore, and I have to add a 0 to show that now we're multiplying by a number that's in the tens place, and that's that other 4 on the bottom. So since we already multiplied 48 times 4 for our first set of multiplication, we can actually just write this number again, because we know that 48 times 4 again is going to be the same number. So I'm going to put a 2 here, a 9 here, and a 1 here. Okay, so now I'm going to add them up. I'd get a 2 here. This would be 11, so I need to regroup that 1. Then again, this is going to be another 11, and then a 2. So I've got 2,112. Now I have to go back and deal with the decimal. So I'm going to go ahead and put a decimal here at the end of my multiplication answer. And I'm going to move it to the left, the same number of spaces as there are decimals in my original problem. So if I go up to my original problem, I have a 4 in a decimal place value and an 8 in the decimal place value. That means I had 2 decimal numbers in my original problem. So I'm going to move the decimal for the answer 2 spaces to the left and drop it off right in the middle there. So my final answer here would be 21.12 as my answer. Okay, here's our next one. We're going to take 73.02 and add it to 80.81. So this is an adding one. So whenever we add or subtract decimals, we need to line everything up so that the decimals are all on top of each other, like buttons on a snowman. So maybe I start by doing that right here. I'm making those buttons like a snowman. Or if I wanted to, I could write the first number and then line things up from there. So I'm going to put 73.02. And then right under it, I'm going to put 80.81. And as long as my decimals are on top of each other, I know I've lined things up correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and add those together. I'm going to go ahead and place the decimal for my answer right underneath the decimals in my problems. So there's my 3 buttons. 2 plus 1 is 3. 0 plus 8 is 8. 3 plus 0 is 3. And 7 plus 8 is 15. So my final answer here would be 153.83. Okay, here is my next one. It's a division problem, and you might be looking at it going, there's no decimals there. That's okay. We are going to practice dividing, where instead of getting a remainder, we turn that remainder into a decimal. So we're going to start with that first number of 7, and we're going to divide it by 5. Okay, so I know that 5 goes into 7 one time. 1 times 5 is 5. And when I subtract that, I get 2 left over. Now, like I said, we're not going to have a remainder. Instead, we're going to turn it into a decimal. So what I do here is I'm going to add a decimal to the end of my answer right there. And then I'm going to add a 0 to my remainder. So then I'm going to go ahead and keep dividing. So remember, what happens is you add a decimal up into your answer space, and then you add a 0 to the remainder. 5 hits into 20 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20. When I subtract it, I have 0 left over. Well, now that I have no remainder and no more numbers to bring down, I know I'm finished. So my answer here would be 1.4. Okay, here's our next one. It's another multiplication one, but it's a much bigger number than we had before. So I'm going to need lots of room for this one. Again, I'm going to ignore the decimals. They are not there. I'm just going to write 9886 times 317. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is multiply everything on the top by the 7. 6 times 7 is 42. 8 times 7 is 56, plus 4 would be 60. 8 times 7 again is 56, but this time plus 6 would be 62. So I'll put a 2 here and a 6 here. Then 9 times 7 is 63, and 63 plus 6 is 69. So this is the first row of answers. So now that I am done multiplying by the 7, I'm going to cross it off. I can either cross off the little regrouping numbers, or I can just erase them just so I don't get them confused with any more regrouping numbers I may be adding to the top there. And then I'm going to add a 0 down here to show that now I'm multiplying by a number in the tens place. Okay, so now I'm going to multiply everything on the top, the 9886, by the 1 in the middle. The good thing about that is any number times 1 is just that number. So I can just write 6, 8, 8, 9 right there. Didn't have to think too hard about that one. Okay, so now I'm going to cross off the 1 because I'm done multiplying by 1. Now I have to add 2 zeros down here to show that I'm now multiplying by a number that's in the hundreds place. So 6 times 3 is 18, so I'll put an 8 there. 8 times 3 is 24. 24 plus 1 is 25, so I'll put a 5 down there and 2 up here. 8 times 3 again is 24, but this time plus 2 is 26, so I'll put a 6 here and a 2 up here. And then 9 times 7, or sorry, 9 times 3 is 27, plus 2 would be 29. So this is what I end up with so far. All right, so let's go ahead and add all this together. I'd get a 2 here and a 6 here. Then it looks like 2 plus 8 is 10, plus another 8 is 18. Okay, then 1 plus 9 is 10, plus another 8 is 18, plus 5 would be 23. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let me double check that real quick. 1 plus 9 is 10. 10 plus 8 is 18. 18 plus 5 is 23. Okay, just wanted to double check that one because that one got kind of big. Okay, so now we have 6 and 6 is 12. Plus another 2 would be 14. Plus 9 should be 13. So I'm going to put a 3 here and regroup this one. Okay, here I end up with 1 plus 9, which is 10. And then 1 plus 2 is 3. Okay, so now I'm going to double check that just because that's a lot of numbers. So let's double check all that. Let's see here. Okay, 9886 and then times 317. Looks like somewhere I ended up missing a 1. There should be a 1 right here. So I'm going to erase that and put a 1. Let's see how I probably got it here by not adding that correctly somehow. But yeah, that's why I double checked because this is a big number. Okay, so that should be a 1 right there. So now the important part is I have to put a decimal after my answer, and then I need to move it however many spaces there are decimals in the problem. So I count 1, 2, 3, 4 decimals in the original problem. So I'm going to be moving this 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces and putting it right there. That means my final answer for this would be 313.3862. And I figured out what happened here. It was in this problem, and I didn't regroup correctly because when I added all that up, it should be 23, not 13. So this should be a 2. And then 2 plus 9 is 11. Okay, so that's what I did. I'm so used to regrouping ones when I add that I didn't think, oh, that's 23. I should have a 2 there. Okay, here is our last example for today. We're going to take 83.6 and divide it by 84. And we're going to round our answer to the nearest tenth. Now, the reason it says that is because a lot of times when you're dividing with decimals, they can go on and on and on and on. So sometimes if that's the case, you'll be asked to round it to a nearest place value. In this case, we're going to round it to the nearest tenth. But here's how we set it up. We're going to take that 83.6, and then we're going to be dividing that by 84. So before I even start dividing, I'm going to go ahead and put a decimal up into my answer space. And what that does is now I don't have to worry about accounting for the decimal later. I can just divide it like I normally would, and it'll kind of just magically become part of the answer. So I know 84 does not fit into 8 or 83 for that matter, right? But it will fit into 836. What I'm thinking is it'll fit 9 times because I know 84 times 10 would be 840, and 836 isn't quite that. So I'm going to go down and go 9 to see what that is. So if I do 84 times 9, 4 times 9 is 36. And then 8 times 9 is 72 plus 3 would give me 75. So I end up with 756 here. So I'm going to put the 9 there and then 756 here. And when I subtract it, I end up with a 0 there. I have to make this a 7 and this a 13. So that gives me 80 left over. Okay. And now that's a clue that I got as close to it as I could because the number I got when I subtracted is less than the number I'm dividing by. So that means I'm right on track. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this, and I'm going to add a 0 to the remainder because remember, we can't have remainders when we have decimals. So again, 840 times 10 is going to get me, or sorry, 84 times 10 is going to give me 840, which would be too much. And I know from last time from doing this that 84 times 9 is 756. So I think that's a good choice again. I'm going to go with 9, 756 here. And then I'm going to go ahead and subtract that. And I'm going to have to make this a 7, which makes this a 10, and then it becomes a 9 and a 10. So that's 4, 4. So we have 44 left over. Now, I could add a 0 to the remainder and keep going, but remember it told us to round to the nearest 10th. So now I have enough digits in my answer to round to the nearest 10th because I have 0.99. I have to the hundredths place. Well, since this number in the hundredths place, or just to the right of the tens place, is 9, that means it's going to raise the score. It's going to raise this 9 up to a 10. But I can't have 10 in my tens place, so that means I'm going to have to move it over here, so that becomes a 1. Basically, this answer rounded to the nearest 10th is equal to 1. I know that was tricky, but I wanted you to see what happens when you are dividing by decimals and it keeps going, and then you have to round. All right, so that was our kind of quick review of operations with decimals. I know we didn't get to a subtraction problem, but that is the same as adding, same procedure, same steps as adding, except when everything's lined up, you'd subtract instead of adding. All right, well, I hope to see you again soon. Bye.